again. I'm heading to our history book. It looks like that. And you can just listen. I'm just going to review a little bit of what we've been talking about in our Indian unit. We started out saying that the Indians were here in America before the white man came. And we wondered about how they got here. Maybe they came down through Alaska. Maybe they came across on rafts from Africa or from, I don't know. There's all kinds of theories about that. But I don't know the answer to that part. But I do know that they were here before the white man. And they had, it sounded like, in the studies that I've done, it sounds like the Indians were everywhere in America. They weren't just located in the south or the north or the east or the west, but there were actually little tribes all over the continent of America, North America. And we did learn that they called their little villages tribes, and each tribe was separate. The tribes didn't all get together and do something. That each tribe was like a little world unto itself. And they made up their own rules, they had their own government, they had things that they just did in that tribe. Some tribes spoke one way and another tribe spoke a different way. Since they didn't have any reading or writing, it was just a spoken language. Every little tribe was able to speak whatever they wanted, and you learned how to speak from your parents, just like you learned how to speak from your parents. You never really thought about it, but when you were just little, like probably 10 months old, right in there, and mommy would hold you on her lap and she would say, "Mama," and you would look at her mouth so carefully and she'd say, "Mama," and pretty soon you understood, "Mama," and she was so excited. Or maybe daddy held you and you said, "Da, da." Oh, look at, oh, he can talk. Oh, and then maybe at the very first you didn't even know what you were saying. But it didn't take you long before you realized, Mama, every time you said that word, Mommy came. Or every time you said Dada, Daddy was there. Okay, so you understood. Slowly but surely. So you learned how to speak from your parents, and so did the Indians, same way. But they didn't learn from books. We also learned that the Indians, the Indian, little baby Indians, they called the papoose, and many times the papoose was strapped to a mommy on a cradle board, which was just like a big piece of wood, so just so it wouldn't bend, and they strapped that little baby in, and he would ride around on mommy's back. And so the baby was called a papoose. The Indians, the women were into gathering berries. They were into roots and barks and things that they could eat. And they did know very well what was poisonous and what wasn't. They were very wise in that area. They were also the ones that built the house. They took care of the children, and that was their job. They made the clothes, cooked the dinners, and that kind of thing. The men were hunters and protectors, and they were good at what they did. They spent many hours talking about it, many hours planning it, where the elk were going to be in a certain time, or where the deer were going to be, or where they had seen buffalo. So they talked about it. That was interesting to them. And, today, same way. You get a whole group of people together, adults together, and the women are talking about something they're cooking or something they're baking, something they're making, something about their children. They're into that relational thing, did you know Great Aunt Gussie, she married Uncle Fred, whatever, all of that kind of thing. And when you listen to the men's conversation, they're not talking about people. They're talking about things. Either they're talking about the fast motorboat that they're going to get for the summer. They're talking about a vacation that they're going to go on. They're talking about some kind of cars. They're talking about the game they're watching on TV. They're talking about some game that they play, maybe pool or something like that. They're talking about things, okay? Because that's what they like. And if you live in a hunting family, sooner or later they talk about guns, or they talk about where they're going to go this fall to get the best kind of deer or whatever. Okay, so it really hasn't changed that much. And the children, were mostly with Mommy as they were little. When the boy got to be about 13, that's when he started to grow up. And then we talked a little bit about when the father would take them out into the forest and leave him for a period of time and see if he could survive on his own. And if he did, he was a man. And he was always, from that time on, he was always treated as a man. We learned that the Indians had different names, not names like Cindy and Jessica and Colin and things like that, no names like that. But they had names like Swift Eagle or Running Bear or Little Deer, things that maybe were maybe something they did well, something like that. And so their names sound strange to us, but to an Indian, that was very common. We know that the Indians ate some kind of course, they ate everything from nature, okay? They didn't usually grow gardens. Every once in a while, yes, but that wasn't the usual way. They would gather things to eat, and they knew what they could eat and what they couldn't. But one of the things that they did have was maize, and it's a kind of a corn. It's about as big as a grown-up's thumb, and they used it all kinds of ways. They dried it, they made flour out of it, they cooked it on a stove, or well, they didn't have a stove, but they cooked it on over fire. That was one of their main foods that they could find, this thing called maize. And it was really maize that helped the Pilgrims later on, because the Indians would take these corn kernels, like little seeds, and they would bury them. And the Pilgrims, when they landed in America, remember that first year they about starved to death because they didn't land here until November, and they were so hungry, and they got so sick, and it was very, very sad. But they did find some hills of maize, and so they took the maize, and that helped them survive through that winter, through that first hard winter. And of course, by springtime, Squanto was there and helped them to grow food, and that helped a lot. But these Indians planted maize. Then we learned a little bit about these Indians had legends, stories that they loved to tell, and part of the stories were true, and like maybe what their grandfather did or what the great-great-grandfather did, or stories like that. And the kids would love to just sit at a campfire and listen to the stories that the old wise one would say, or their dads would tell, and that was always fun. And I'm going to read you one of those stories in just a minute. Remember, these Indians had no way of knowing about Jesus Christ, and so it was the white man that brought the gospel to them and taught them and set up many missions, teaching the Indians about how to be saved and teaching them about God, teaching them about Jesus. But until that point, they made up things. They made up things like evil spirits and great spirits and good spirits. And they had the spirit of this and the spirit of that, the great spirit in the sky, the spirit of the water, the spirit of the desert, the spirit of the earth. All of that is what they came up with their humanity. They had no basis for it. They had no way to prove it, but they just pretended in their heads. And, it was not a way of salvation. It was just man's thoughts. And we learned also that Indians' ways and white man's ways were not the same. Indians believed that all the land belonged to everybody. And the white man believed that they could own a little piece of land for themselves and nobody could step on it. And they put a fence around it and say it's mine. And the Indians would break the fence down and say, no, this belongs to everybody. And the white man would build the fence back up and say, no, this piece is mine, stay off my property. And the Indian would break it down and say, no, this is my hunting ground. You have put your fence around my hunting ground. On and on it went. And so the white man and the Indian did not agree at all. And it caused some very hard feelings between them. And, the white man hated the Indian and the Indian hated the white man. So they could not live together well because they did not agree. They love to tell legends about this and that. And let me read one of the legends. And this is in your book if you want to follow. It's on page 36. Now, this is just a crazy story, but this is one of the stories that the kids like to hear, just like Little Red Riding Hood. Okay, okay, kids like to hear it, but don't ask me why, because it's really a horrible story. But we keep passing it from generation to generation, so usually everybody knows about Little Red Riding Hood or Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You usually know those stories, but they're really not really nice stories. They're really kind of cruel stories. So this is a weird story, but get ready. Here we go. Once there was an old man who had one son, and the boy's name was Opachi. The father was very proud of his son, and it was time for Opachi to observe a fast before he became a man. He wanted to have a spirit who would be the guardian of his life. The father wanted Opachi to last longer than any other boy, so he said, "Opachi, endure your hunger like a man, and at the end of 12 days you will receive food and a blessing." Well, every day his father visited Opachi, and Opachi lay still and didn't say a word. On the 9th day, Opachi said to his father, "Father, may I break my fast? I had a dream that spoke of evil." "Oh, no, fast 3 more days, my son, and you will be blessed." On the 11th day, Opachi again asked to break his fast. His father said, "Fast another day, my son, and then you will be blessed." Well, finally, on the 12th day, the father again visited Opachi. He found the boy standing. He'd painted his chest red, and he said, "My father would not let me break my fast. I will be happy because I obeyed my parent. My guardian spirit will give me a new body, and now I must go." In an instant, Opachi was changed into a robin. He flew to a nearby tree, and the father was very sad, and Opachi said to him, "Oh, don't cry, do not sorrow, my father. I will always be a friend to men and live near their dwellings. I will sing to make people happy." And Opachi flew away. Since then, there have been robins in the world. Now, there you go. Okay. Crazy story, all made up, all pretend, but they love to hear it. Because every boy that's little looks forward to being big. It's just the way it is. Every girl that's little looks forward to being big. They don't want to go back and say, "Well, I wish I was 3 years old again." None of you say that. No, you don't want to be 3. You want to, what will it be like when I get to be 12? What will it be like when I get to be 15? Oh, a teenager. Oh, that's going to be fun. You always are looking ahead. You're not looking behind and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to, I wish I was 7. I've had my 8th birthday now, and I just wish I could be 7 again." Nope. Nobody likes to go there. You're always looking ahead. And so every boy in the tribe, whatever tribe it was always looking ahead of what it was going to be like when he had his turn to show his bravery and become a man. And it's a good thing. I think as mommies, we want to just hold on to our sons and our daughters and just wish they would stay little. "Oh, would you just stay little?" And we might find an old picture on a camera somewhere and say, "Oh, you were so cute when you were just 4. Oh, and now look at you, you're twice that age. You're 8 years old." That's the mommy in us. We want to keep little people little. But that's not God's plan. God said you need to grow up, and you're on your way up. And it's a good thing. And it's hard for mommies. And they might cry when they see, oh, he's going to be in 3rd grade in the fall. I remember we just brought him home from the hospital. How can he be in 3rd grade? There's no way. But that's a mommy for you. And, but you're on your way up. And so these boys, these Indian boys, they love to hear, "Oh, if I was Opachi, I would be so brave out in the forest." And they could just imagine what it would be like. So that was one of the crazy stories that the Indians love to tell, one of the legends. In the next few weeks, we are going to be talking about 5 different tribes in America. And we're going to start with the Cherokee tribe. And if we were in class, we would be doing drawing notes. I don't know if I want you to do that, or if I just want you to listen. Maybe you could listen and draw at the same time. I don't know. But we're going to be talking about 5 different tribes, and then there's a little quiz at the end of each of the tribes. So you kind of, and I'll put those quizzes online so that you can, take them that way. Anyway, so it's going to be a fun to travel across America and learn about how 5 different Indian tribes lived. Okay? All right. Thanks for listening. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.